So, let's begin from a question. I will give you some information about some real people, and you will tell me if that person I'm talking about is a successful one, as we understand success, or not. Okay? So, for instance, straight A student, bachelor in Harvard, then working for 2 years in a top consulting company, then masters in Harvard, then working in Oracle and getting married. Is it a successful personality? Yes, it is a successful personality, definitely. A famous fashion designer who has his own label and lives in a house that is worth $40 million. Is it a successful personality? Yes, it is. A famous movie producer who is creating movies for the Hollywood. Successful? And yes, you are right. They are successful, real people, as thousands of other people who are successful suicide. Now that is something wrong, yeah? We hear a lot of our parents talking to us about the importance of earning a decent salary, working in a decent company. And we read a lot on media about successful people and we compare ourselves to them, and suddenly those successful people decide to kill themselves. Now, this is a graph showing the GDP per capita growth. And what we can see that, especially if we talk about Lithuania and other developed countries, we have made a wonderful progress. We have become like 30 times more rich than our ancestors, so we should be proud of the last 3-4 centuries, generations of people, yeah? Can we applause for them? Applause, applause. However, the question is, have we become 30 times more happy? And the answer is, definitely not. Numerous scientific researchers show that there is no correlation between happiness and money, that money does not cause happiness. For example, in the upper case you can see the situation from United Kingdom, in the lower case you can see situation from United States, and both show that when GDP is growing per capita, the level of happiness of the people has even a downward slope. Something is wrong here. So when I was invited to speak for this TEDx, and I heard the topic, it's time, I thought that maybe it is time to talk not about money, not about income, not about GDP, but to talk about the main parameter of life, about happiness. And I decided to choose a bit different approach than usually. I decided to talk about happiness using some kind of mathematical formulas. Like in this example. For instance, most of you probably looking at such formula think that it is, what, mathematics? Physics? Any other ideas? It is political science. This is what I found out at the university, that you can depict nearly everything in a form of equation. So I thought, why not try it with happiness? Oops. And I took the very simplified formula for decision making. I will not expand on it. I just tried to transform it in the form of happiness, how we understand it. Then simplified it. I took all the difficult terms, for example, probability, utility, and so on, and named them into one. The amount of happiness we achieve from some kind of a goal. And this is the, Okay, and this is the formula I get for the beginning. That happiness in life equals to happiness you derive from achieving some kind of a goal minus the costs of the process towards that goal, or the journey. And then I took 4 main forces and tried to show what kind of impact they have on happiness of our everyday life. So firstly, let's talk about diminishing marginal returns. Now, if you look at the happiness we get from achieving some kind of a goal in life. For example, we want to get $1 million from our business. We want to take a particular position in a particular investment banking company or consulting, and so on. And we tend to concentrate too much on such goals that we call mean goals. In addition to that, we tend to overestimate a lot the happiness, the feeling that we expect to get from that goal when it is finally achieved. Because the reality is harsh. And the reality is that when we finally achieve something, we find out that it is not what we expected for. We expected to be very happy when we do this, and now the reality is different. And we find out that the happiness is much lower, or even the plus sign is questionable. It may become even negative because you get frustrated, you expected something, but you see that reality is totally different. And why it happens? One of the ways to explain it is so-called law of diminishing marginal returns. Now, if we take a homeless person, and we start giving $1,000 each month for that person. Now, he doesn't feel hunger anymore, he has a shelter, so he gets a lot of a boost of happiness, doesn't he? Now, if we add another $1,000, he still gets quite a lot of additional happiness because now he can buy some clothes, he can take some drink in a bar, and so on. But if we add additional 1,000, it doesn't change too much because the person starts already taking things for granted he didn't have before. If we add additional 1,000 and one more 1,000 and one more 1,000, we see that the additional utility or happiness you get from money diminishes until at one point it reaches the point when it doesn't make any change at all, or just a little bit. And we may have different numbers, imagining when is that point. Who thinks that, for example, when you earn $100,000, it is the point when you are achieving on the graph? Who thinks $100,000 per year? Who thinks $1 million per year? Raise your hands. Who thinks $2 million, $3 million, $4 million? And the reality, according to scientific research, is that it is approximately $40,000 to $70,000 annually in the United States. In Lithuania, it is counted that it is approximately 1,000 euros per month, when after that point, it doesn't make so much of a change. And you will probably tell, no shit, how comes that, yeah? You imagine now, okay, if I get a big house, a supercar, how happy I would be. But now try to close your eyes and remember a feeling I am sure you have felt it for many times in your life. When, for example, you wanted something so much. You wanted some kind of candy, yeah? Or a toy, or a girl, or a boy. And finally you got it. You achieved. How did you feel? Happy for 1 minute, 1 hour. Later on you got boring, and you understood that it's not so cool as I was expecting it to be. And the same happens when you think about, for example, you raise a goal for yourself to get a supercar or to get a yacht and so on, what I see a lot of my age people are doing. However, the reality is like this. And what we need to do when it comes to this? The answer is very simple. Every time, in order to make a rational decision, in order to avoid that misery, what you get when you find out that it is not what you expected, every time when you imagine some kind of utility of happiness you're expecting to get from achieving your mean goal, divide it by a few times. Be critical about that, and only in such a way you can make a rational decision in your life and understand what really you are striving for and what really will make you happy in your life. Now, let's go to the other point I want to make. The other problem is that it is very difficult for us to give some kind of a quantifiable value for a process. It is very easy to measure, for example, you earn $1,000 or $2,000, but it is very difficult to measure your everyday activities, how happy you are, and so on. And what happens that we usually either underestimate the importance of the costs you get from the journey, from the process, going somewhere towards your goal, or we simply don't give a shit about that. And the reality is totally different. The reality is that it is much, much more important than that single moment when you strive or achieve some kind of a goal. Because it adds up all the feelings, all the memories in a long-lasting time. In addition to that, what is very important that it depends on every single individual. Which one do you choose? Do you choose a negative term as the costs of the journey of your everyday life? Or do you choose the positive term, which may be much bigger than the happiness you derive from the goal? And when I mean happiness from journey, what I mean is the balance in life. When you work something that you love, something that you feel a passion and understand the meaning behind, and you fulfill your potential. In addition to that, you manage to keep your relationships with your friends, with your family, you find a love, you manage to keep your health in a good state, you manage to get lots of wonderful experiences while traveling and so on. And this is what we call a journey. And this is how the real formula looks like. However, there is a question mark I put next to the journey, because we are all, I guess, especially from Vykintas gymnasium, who are ambitious, we want to achieve a lot, we are studying a lot and so on. So maybe the journey can be just wasting time, just going to the parties with friends and so on. So then we need to add up one more term. Journey aligned to the vision you have. I have already talked about the so-called mean goals. For example, earning $1 million. How cool is that? Or getting a yacht or something like this. But the most important things we need to care about are the end goals or the vision you have. The vision needs to show what kind of values you are acting accordingly, what kind of person you want to be in life, what kind of impact, positive impact for the world you want to make, and how in general you want to feel in the end. So finally, this is what we get. Happiness derived from journey that is aligned to your vision is much bigger than what you expect to get from the goal. And a question for you, what would you choose? A supercar, or, I will provide a very trivial example still, a normal car with lots of love with the person you love in that car. So, a question for you to answer. I will not answer it. However, even though it seems quite obvious, I believe that for you, you now think, it's obvious, it's totally understandable and so on. However, the reality is that when we talk about ambitious people, when we talk about the clever ones, most of them, or at least a big part of them, choose the upper scenario. They believe, okay, I will strive for the goal of becoming successful in investment banking industry. I will screw my relationship, I will screw my health, will work all days and nights. Believe me, this is what happens. I have lots of friends who are doing like this. Because I will do like this for a few years, and later on I will be okay. But this doesn't happen. And not people understand the reality. Now, the third term, very important one, expectations management. And we add up to the formula a multiplier E. Now what I mean by that multiplier, it stands for the expectations definitely. And if you have, for example, before some kind of event or experience, let's say a camp, if you have no expectations, then the multiplier is 1. And it doesn't have an impact on the total of happiness you get. However, what we usually tend to do is to expect something amazing. To be very positive, to imagine something will be great experience and so on and so on. However, when we go there to that camp, for instance, which does not depend on ourselves, some kind of external environment, if it gets a bit worse than we expected, our multiplier becomes less than 1. what this means that it decreases the amount of happiness we would have. Even though if there was no expectations, we would be much happier. Now, if we have, on the contrary, negative expectations, for example, we expect something to be a really bad experience, okay, but I need to go there, yes? And you go there and you see that it's not good, but it's not as bad as I expected. Oh, and then you are increasing your happiness. You feel much better at that time because the multiplier, E, becomes greater than 1. This is how it looks like in the equations. So, what we need to do, a very simple thing, to learn, manage our expectations before any of the life event that doesn't depend on ourselves. And the fourth thing, the question for you, how did kings and queens live? The answer is, they lived much worse than any single one of you. So imagine now, you live much better than kings and queens a few centuries ago. But somehow that doesn't make sense for us, yeah? We're still not so happy about this fact. Now, we are getting again to the term that I started my talk about success. Now, if we evaluate business, what we do, we not just look at the brand or the revenues, we also look at the profit, we also look at the cash flow, we also look at the credits, at the state of the employees, at the customers the business have, and so on. So in order to have a full picture. Now, if we evaluate another personality, what we do? We usually look at two easiest factors. The position or career the person has, that's depicted on the media, and the amount of money. And then we somehow understand this as the happiness of that person. And we start comparing on the surface factors, not understanding the reality. And then we get another multiplier, S, surface comparison, which works in such a way that if we compare ourselves with more successful individuals, then the multiplier becomes less than 1. And even though we have the same state in our life, everything is okay and so on, but just because of comparison that is based on some kind of very trivial factors, we decrease our happiness. Simple as that. It works like this. So, the question is, so what we need to do? One thing is to be critical. When we see some news about successful people on media and so on, we need to be critical and understand that we are evaluating them on some random factors. And we don't exactly know how they feel and if they are happy and so on. And we need to understand that it makes lots of sense on our happiness, ourselves. And the question is, if we can make the multiplier S on the surface comparison greater than 1. And yes, we can. However, it is a much more difficult process, and I don't have time today to talk about this. So I'd like to end reminding that when it comes to happiness we derive from goal, always have in mind that it always happens to be lower than we expect. When we talk about happiness we derive from our journey and vision, it is always the most important factor defining how we are feeling in our everyday life. Then we need to manage our expectations because it really has a big sense on how we feel. And we need to look critical at comparison to others. So, thank you very much. I believe that lots of people could criticize the ideas I talked today. However, there are two facts we have today in life. One thing, that the main criteria that defines the person, the quality of life, is the happiness, not money or anything else. And the another fact we have that we lack information about that. We lack studies and so on. We have lots of researchers, academia, who are studying management, maths, languages and so on, but no one talks about the major parameter of life, about the major happiness. So therefore, I believe that it is time to finally understand happiness. Thank you very much. I hope it was ideas for spreading. Thank you.